How do you lie? How do somebody lie convincingly?
So the way I can't talk about everybody else, but the way I approach it is I have to strategize everything. If I'm telling
Okay.
you that I fainted in the morning today, then I
Yeah.
have to have something in mind. For example, I might tell you that my I got a hemoglobin test done in the evening and it came out to be 6. And then I am going to I am going to put a reminder in my phone to tell you 2 weeks later that it's up to 9 now. I'm doing better. I'm just going to casually slip it into a conversation that it's come up to 9 because of all the beetroot I've been eating.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Khayalepulao podcast. Today, I have with me a very good friend of mine, Astha. Astha, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Aditya, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good as well, thank you.
तो आस्था को मैं ऐसे जानता हूँ कि हम दोनों सेम कंपनी में काम करते थे. आई जॉइंड एज अ फ्रेशर एंड आस्था वाज माय सीनियर. एंड आस्था मुझ पे बहुत चिल्लाती थी यार. बट ये हुआ कि दैट चिल्लाना somehow turned into a good friendship. और शहर बदले और कंपनीज बदली, बट ये फ्रेंडशिप अभी तक है. सो आई एम एक्चुअली ग्रेटफुल फॉर दैट एंड थैंक यू आस्था फॉर डूइंग दिस.
I was told that you're not going to be holding any grudges about all the chillana.
I am not, but that's how I would like to introduce us. Awesome.
Good enough.
So, okay. So, Asa has a lot of interest in literature, and हम डिस्कस करेंगे कि यार ये लिटरेचर में क्यों इतना इंटरेस्ट आया. बिकॉज यार लिटरेचर तो कूल नहीं होता ना. लिटरेचर बोरिंग होता है, बुड्ढों के लिए होता है, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा. बट आप बचपन से ही लिटरेचर पे इतना फोकस कर रहे थे, तो आई वुड वांट टू नो दैट. And Astha is also writing a couple of books in parallel. So we will know more about the books, about the creative writing process, etc. And let's dive into it. Okay. So Astha, सबसे पहला सवाल मुझे ये आ रहा है यार कि आपको ये इंटरेस्ट आया कहाँ से. लाइक why literature and from where did it come?
So it wasn't like chutki baja ke literature. It was storytelling.
Okay.
And I think it started with the dadi and nani and everybody. Bachpan mein jaise everybody gets to listen to all of these stories from them, na?
हाँ.
So my dadi was a really religious person, and वो हमेशा ये कथाएं पढ़ते रहती थी, and I just got used to listening to a lot of them when I was 3, 4, and all of those formative years.
Yeah.
So I just got into stories from there actually, from like Satyanarayan ki katha and Ganesh ji ki katha and all of those things.
हाँ.
But then it became something else. It just became an obsession because my mom used to find me sitting with that katha ki book like at random points of time in the day. Like Sham
Oh
ko I'm
wow.
sitting with that katha ki book probably, and then she's like, यहाँ पे नहीं रखने का होता है ये. Just पूजा घर में ही जाके पढ़ो, otherwise don't read it while you're sitting in the living room. So she used to like shout at me, but for me it was a story that I wanted to read, and that's just how that's how it started, and then it
Okay.
went on to Chota Birbal and Champak and comics like Chacha Chaudhary and Nagraj and Archies and everything, but that's how it started with Kathai.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah. And now that you're writing so many books, है ना, 3 तो मुझे पता है और उसके बाद पता नहीं आप और कितने लिख रहे हो या कितनी स्टोरीज चल रही हैं आपके दिमाग में. टेल अस समथिंग अबाउट द क्रिएटिव राइटिंग प्रोसेस. जैसे सबका अपना अपना होता है ना, कि कोई स्टार्टिंग से स्टार्ट करता है, कोई एंड से स्टार्ट करता है. हाउ दैट वर्क्स फॉर यू? लाइक हाउ व्हाट्स योर क्रिएटिव राइटिंग प्रोसेस?
So I'm very emotion driven. I don't exactly have a story in mind when I start writing. I don't have anything. I don't strategize it that way. I just
ओके.
have an emotion. I feel something. And then I start having a conversation. I start imagining a conversation between two people. It could be like best friends, it could be lovers, it could be a father and daughter, it could be any relationship in this world. But I start imagining a conversation,
या.
and then if I find that conversation interesting enough, it might become a story, a poem, or a book. sometimes. But that's how it starts generally. Or it's happened that I've fallen in love with somebody, and then everything that I'm feeling has just I've poured everything out in a book or something. Not specifically about that person, but it has just inspired me enough to write a lot, and then it's become a book. For
Hmm.
example, I was in love with MS Dhoni for like 7 years, I think. Interestingly, seven is
Wow,
his
man.
jersey number as well. But I was in
Yeah.
love with him for 7 years. And I wrote this book when I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
It's like two registers full of that story about, how a girl falls in love with a celebrity, and then how she gets to meet.
Mm.
I've never met Tony, but I write about that person meeting that huge ass film star. And then, yeah. So it just inspired me enough to write a book.
That's very interesting, yeah. And now who are you in love with?
Multiple people. Falling in love is something that comes very naturally to me. I just chutki baja ke I fall in love. I will fall in
Okay.
love with like a look, a book, a ped, a river, jharna, anything I fall in love with. And I just I think I'm lost for a while in whatever it is. It could
Hmm.
just be like, the way a mother is like reprimanding a child. It could just be an old lady trying to make ends meet or something.
Hmm.
Yeah, on the road, those old people that beek mang rahe hote hain on things like that. It could be anything, I can't say, but I can fall in love with anybody at any point of time. And I'm not saying that obviously most of these are not going to end up in a lover situation, but if it comes to falling in love, it just happens with me. I'm not
Hmm.
fascinated, I just fall in love.
Hmm. And that's interesting, yeah. And
Yeah.
during this creative writing process, what generally ऐसे ना movies में दिखाते हैं and that the writer becomes that person, just to understand the emotion he's feeling. Have you gone through that process yourself, just to write or just to
Oh, I have to.
get the story?
I have. Even if it's a very simple thing like telling a lie, I have to live through it. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to convincingly tell that lie as well. So, if I'm telling you that I've got eye flu, I'm probably scratching my eye or something while telling you that I've got eye flu. So, I generally live through everything that I'm writing about, or, telling a story of. I live through all of it.
This is interesting, the lie bit that you said. Tell me more about it. Like how to lie. Let's do a lie. How to lie 101, okay? How do you lie? How do somebody lie convincingly?
So the way I can't talk about everybody else, but the way I approach it is I have to strategize everything. If I'm telling
Okay.
you that I fainted in the morning today, then I
Yeah.
have to have something in mind. For example, I might tell you that my I got a hemoglobin test done in the evening and it came out to be 6. And then I am going to I am going to put a reminder in my phone to tell you 2 weeks later that it's up to 9 now. I'm doing better. I'm just going to casually slip it into a conversation that it's come up to 9 because of all the beetroot I've been eating. But if I'm telling you a lie, I am going to make it a thing. It's a whole thing. It's not just in that moment. And
Mm,
that's why I don't exactly forget it when I tell lies to people, because I have planned it properly.
interesting, yeah. Do you also keep a record of the lies कि कैसी book हो
Those are
जो
my
आप publish
stories.
कर पाओ? Sorry.
Those are my stories. I can tell you about my lies, but then those are my stories. Those are my babies. I can't forget any of them. I remember all of them, but I don't think I'm going to write about them because then people are going to have tells, of when I'm lying. So that's not a risk that I'm going to take.
Okay. Okay. Good. Uh, do you want to tell one lie, uh, just for the sake of it? Because I am very interested in understanding this. कि ये कैसे काम करता है? One example, and we'll
You
move
want
on
me
to
to
the next
lie
topic.
right now? You know it already. I'm
No,
not going to be able to
not
lie
right
right
now,
now.
but something that you have done in the past and you remember कि यार मैं ऐसा किया था और ऐसा हुआ था. जैसे आप अभी हीमोग्लोबिन का एग्जांपल दे रहे थे वैसा.
That has happened. That is a true story.
Oh, okay. That's an example already.
Not with you, but yeah, that has happened with another, colleague of ours when we were working in Chennai together.
Oh,
It was a senior team member that I told that lie to. And then I
okay.
followed up until they were like, "Are you feeling fine now?" And I was like, "Yeah, all the dizziness is gone in like 3 weeks or so." I sort of closed it up with a happy ending, but then, yeah, I literally followed up on it. I updated that person about every little thing that was happening.
That's good, yeah. So you, so this is good. Like you are a, a living writer, and you don't have to like think about developing a story that much कि यार मुझे जबरदस्ती कुछ लिखना है तो आ रहा है. How is your story development process? मतलब कैसे चलता है आपका फिर? How do you develop a story? Uh,
I'm doing theater in real life, is what I'm
yes,
doing.
you are. Yes, you are
It's a
actually.
single person act that I'm putting up whenever I want
Yes,
to.
you are. किसी ने कहा ही है ना कि लाइफ इज अ थिएटर एंड वी ऑल आर कैरेक्टर्स. बट उसमें भी
Absolutely.
आप एक कैरेक्टर कर रहे हो तो कैरेक्टर का
Yes.
लूप नेस्टेड लूप हो गया. Anyway, अच्छा. तो नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन फॉर यू इज जैसे यू सेड इट्स एन इमोशन दैट ड्राइव्स द होल स्टोरी फॉर यू, राइट? इमोशन तो आ गया, ठीक है. बट उसके बाद पूरी स्टोरी लिखना ऐसे थोड़ी हो जाता है कि आ जाता है सब कुछ. देयर मस्ट बी समथिंग दैट यू डू in terms of a story development or a character development, drawing inspiration from some people, or so how does that process work?
So inspirations generally come from so I like I said, I would write a conversation. फिर वो conversation is generally followed up with what happens after this conversation,
Hmm.
obviously, in my head. And if it's going somewhere, then I take it somewhere, It wouldn't
Hmm.
just, I wouldn't end that conversation there because, again, there are a lot of conversations that we have with people in daily life as well.
Yeah.
But कुछ conversations उतने ही होते हैं for
Hmm.
that moment. Kuch
Hmm.
conversations between friends, between husbands and wives, between, a parent and a child, those are forever. Those are the stories that we've got.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if it's sort of leading to something like that, it's a relationship that I'm writing about.
Hmm.
It's not exactly a story that I'm starting off with. It's a relationship that I'm writing about. It could be friends, it could be lovers, it could be, a parent and a child, anything. And then from it could even be a boss and a secretary, by the way. It's one of those less talked about but very important relationships.
Hmm.
So it could be any of them. And then followed up with what happens next. Sometimes because of all the, the fantasy and the supernatural inspirations that I get on a daily basis from Marvel and Harry Potter and everything else, I
Yeah.
sometimes add those if it fits in, but not really. My main focus is just drama and romance, but I like a little bit of a dash of supernatural in my stories. So that's what I do. But yeah, and then in terms of inspiration, the characters that I write are generally drawn from people around me,
Hmm.
uh, or characters that I've loved, in other books or series. For example, there's a book called The Sweet Revenge, and there's
Hmm.
the male protagonist is a thief, but I think that's the first book character that I fell in love with, and I base
Hmm.
a lot of my male lead characters on Philip Chamberlain. So that's one of my inspirations. Other than that, friends, family, crushes, boyfriends,
Hmm.
anybody and everybody
Okay.
is getting used.
It's getting used. Wow. Okay, so you said that you draw inspiration from Philip, right? तो ऐसा बहुत लोग करते होंगे, right? That they read something and then they are like, okay, I like this thing and I want to write about it. And a lot of people call it plagiarism, right? What do you think? Is it plagiarism? Is it inspiration? Is it okay to draw inspiration like that? Or you always have to be original about your thoughts and everything?
You can't be original. The thing is, all the ideas and all the characters and everything else is now taken up. It's all done.
Hmm.
So if you're waiting for that one rare idea that you might have an original one, then you might be waiting for some time. And it also might not be something that you want to write about. For example, I like writing about romance specifically. And there's not a lot that is left to be said about romance now. I think everything's been covered up.
Yeah.
Everything's been covered. So if I have to write about romance, I have to, draw inspiration from something that it's okay to draw inspiration, is what I'm saying. Even if
Hmm.
I'm, for example, even if I'm not drawing inspiration from something, even if
Hmm.
I'm thinking of it as an original idea, if I Google it up, I will
Hmm.
find something that has been done about it already. And this happened with me. So I had this idea of, uh, how a wrong number could lead to a very, it was like a comedy horror situation. But then I
Oh,
found that there's a film that has been made about it already. And then I was discouraged for a while, but then I was like, it's okay. I'm going to write
yeah.
about it like a couple of years later, maybe, not right now.
Yeah, sure.
But it is an idea that I thought of on my own. It was not exactly something that I read, but it has already been done.
Yeah,
So even if you think that it's an original idea, it might not be, is what I'm trying to say.
just
And it's
sure.
okay. You should just write what you want to write.
Yeah,
Whether you know that it's been done or not, that's okay. If you're
yeah.
getting inspired, like I get inspired with all of these characters that I read in Jane Austen and Shakespeare and Nora Roberts, that's good as well. That's good enough as well because you're adding your own perception to it, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. And it also takes a,
Shakespeare wouldn't,
yeah.
yeah. So Shakespeare wouldn't look at a male lead character like Jane Austen would, right?
Hmm.
No two people
Makes sense.
can, that's the power of perception. You can't really that cannot be repeated.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
something that only the person who's, the speaker will know what they want to say.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's actually a good thing. Rather than reading everything and saying, I will not write whatever has been written and creating so much of creative pressure for yourself, you are drawing inspiration from people. It's like an unplugged version of a song that you're singing. It's literally that, right? You
Mhm.
have your own version of the song and you're singing it. So that's great. I mean,
Yeah. And you don't
yeah,
have to repeat the whole song. You can just be inspired by that,
just
one
one
part of
line
the
or
song and then just make a whole out of it in your own
yeah,
way.
yeah, 100%. Now tell me, Asa, when you are writing and you have been writing for so many years, sorry,
Hmm.
was there a was there a period or are there instances in your life where you had writer's block, the famous writer's block that everyone gets? What was that journey for you?
I think I generally my writers if I've got a writer's block, it's probably self-induced because I've gotten into situations where I've sort of suppressed my feelings, and I am very feeling driven when I am writing, very emotion driven. So if I suppress that part of myself, then I can't write. फिर तो वो like I guess is what I would say. It's like, thinking about myself as an old friend or somebody, a really, dear old friend or somebody
Hmm,
who was able to express in that way, and this person cannot.
hmm,
And that's how it's happened in my life. For example, it happened when I went through a really bad breakup, and then I just stopped writing. I just didn't want
hmm,
to write after that. So that's when that happened. It was self-induced. ऐसा कभी नहीं हुआ है कि writer's block ऐसे हो गया मुझे because I was getting bored in life or something. ऐसा तो नहीं हुआ है अभी तक. It's been
okay,
self-induced.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. So what happens with me is if I get a writer's block or if I'm not able to write something, and we discuss
Hmm.
this. that I try to write one line. जब तक मुझे ब्लॉक है तब तक I just try to write one line, or I just try to write यार आज ये हुआ, this happened
Hmm.
today, that's all. A couple of lines about that, and that's all. So that still helps me in uh, being touch with writing, right? That I'm
Hmm.
not away from it, and it helps me pass through writer's block. Yeah, it's a good thing. मतलब, write one line a
Hmm.
day. It helps
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you're not inspired to write anything.
Hmm.
Okay, so
But I mean, although I said that it's self-induced and everything, it doesn't mean that I can come out of it easy, you know? It's
hmm,
still really hard to come out of it because I think the last time I did this was it took like 5 years for me to come out of that
wow,
writer's block that I was into. And then the way that I got out of it was just writing about that state of emptiness and that unfeeling state that I was in. And also the fear that came along with it, because just randomly I was like, am I not a writer anymore? Am I just never going to be able to write now? This is just, so I
hmm,
just got really panicked and everything. And then I started writing about that panic, and that's how I
hmm,
came out of it. And
yeah,
funnily enough, the title of that poem was also "Kya ye ek kavita hai," and then I just wrote a whole thing out of it. Ki whether I'm a writer anymore or not, can I do this or not?
that is amazing. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're like writing a book, and or you write anything, है ना? There is there are certain people who say कि जब आप लिखते हो तो आपको काम चाहिए, आपको पहाड़ों पे जाना है, आपको समंदर पे जाना है, and you need that space for yourself to write. कई लोग
Hmm.
ऐसा बोलते हैं कि उनको ट्रेन में धक्के खा रहे हैं तो भी उनको क्रिएटिव आइडियाज आ जाते हैं. So, calm versus chaos. What's what's your poison?
I don't think it's specific with me because
Hmm.
I generally find my own space wherever I am. I don't have to. That's why I also never get bored with. I just never get bored because I always find my own space wherever I am, even if I
Hmm.
am in like in a crowd or something.
Hmm.
Unless people are continuously talking to me,
Hmm.
that's a problem then. But if I'm just there like a wallflower in the corner, that's okay. Even if there's noise around me, I can still like phase it out and you know think of something right that I will write later on about. Um,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
no, not really. I don't think that it matters with me whether it's
Hmm.
complete silence or whether it's chaotic or. But definitely, something worth mentioning is the beaches really inspire me a lot when it comes to writing. And whenever I went to Tiruvanmiyur beach, which is probably better than the other beaches in Chennai, I used to write a lot after coming back from there.
Right.
And yeah, so beaches definitely inspire me, but that's got to do with the sea, and there's nothing that silence or chaos has to do with it because the sea is like it has that silent side and that chaotic side all in its own.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the sea is what is special to me, I guess, more than
Yeah.
anything.
That's interesting. I think for me, what happens is, मेरे को ना अगर कुछ ट्रिगर करता है, देन आई टेंड टू राइट. या फिर जब मेरा दिन बहुत ज्यादा बिजी हो जाता है, देयर आर डेज व्हेन यू आर लाइक ओवर बर्डन विथ एवरीथिंग,
Hmm.
कि मतलब ऑफिस में भी चल रहा है, घर से भी कुछ हो रहा है, पर्सनल लाइफ भी ऐसी चल रही है. मेरे साथ जब ऐसा होता है, देन आई वुड राइट माई बेस्ट, आई थिंक.
Okay.
सो
Okay.
आई थिंक इट्स वेरी डिफरेंट फॉर अस, एंड दैट्स अ गुड
Yeah.
थिंग. या. ओके, तो टेल मी. और ये मेरा सवाल इन जनरल एक इसके तरफ से, क्योंकि अगर मैं भी लिखता हूँ, तो मैं इसमें ना बहुत मुझे डिफिकल्टी होती है कि यू हैव समथिंग कॉल्ड क्रिएटिव एक्सप्रेशन, यू
Hmm.
हैव समथिंग कॉल्ड स्ट्रक्चर.
Hmm.
तो इसमें इंसान बैलेंस कैसे बिठाए? हाउ डू यू बैलेंस दैट?
I don't try to do anything, is what I do.
ओके. ओके.
I just keep it raw and honest.
हम्म.
I think honesty is what is most important to me when I'm writing because we can always get lost in what needs to be done. And I
हम्म.
think what I need to say is more important than what needs to be done. or what needs to be said.
Hmm.
So I keep it to that. I just, just limit myself to what I'm feeling in the moment.
Hmm.
Just write it, go back to it in a week or so, see if it's good enough. If it's not, then I just throw it away or something. I don't use it
Hmm.
anywhere. But I have to just be honest in that moment. I have to be my real and raw self in that moment. I don't get bogged down by what it should be and is there a structure or not, whether this is something people will like or not. I don't really get
Hmm. Hmm.
at
Hmm.
least in that moment I don't do that.
Hmm.
But I understand that we can always get stuck in that whole thing of whether this is fit enough for today's consumption or not in terms of content consumption.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because yeah, people don't really have a lot of attention span these days. So everything
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
catchy and everything that's flashy gets noticed first and gets
Yeah.
consumed first. But then
Yeah. Yeah.
if you get stuck in that, then yeah, no, I don't think that's
Okay.
going to help anybody, because then you're forcing yourself to be somebody that you're probably not.
Yeah.
And if you're doing something that, or if you're being somebody that you're not, you can never be good. I don't think so. You will
Okay.
just
But
be in an illusion of, yeah.
sure. But don't you think uh, applying that in a poem or a muse or a shairi versus applying applying a structure in writing a book, it
Hmm.
differs. मतलब if you're writing a shairi or a poem, it was in that moment, or अच्छा लगा ठीक है, it's not good, you throw it off. That's great, but you can't do it while you're writing a book, right? It must be something different there. There you would have to reread it again, and then you have to structure and come up with something that makes sense in that book, right? Even if at a particular moment you wrote something and it's not making sense or you want to change it, then how do you do it from a book perspective?
Right. So what like I said, I generally start with conversations and I keep to conversations for some time. For
Okay.
example, I'll just, जैसे आज, a father and a daughter are having this conversation. What is the conversation that they're going to have the next day about the same thing?
Hmm.
Is what I'll write next. I'm not going to, I'm going to leave out all the fillers for later. I'll just
Hmm.
write down
Hmm.
all the conversations because those are the important bits and those are the ones that I want to honestly tell ki, ye hua, or this is,
Hmm.
those are the defining yes. So I will just complete those, keep them as real and raw and honest as possible, and
Hmm.
then get to the fillers later on once I'm done with all the conversations. Once it has a story, once it has a defined story, a defined ending, a defined beginning. Beginning not so much actually.
Yeah.
I do the middle and the ending first, and the beginning is probably something that I have to manufacture. It
Hmm.
doesn't come naturally. It has to be like sort of pulled out of everything that's been done in the story,
Hmm. Hmm.
or created in that way, curated in that way to make sense with the story. So I
Hmm.
think that's what I do. Prologues are the most difficult bits to write for me, I think, because of that reason. Because just to start, that you never know how to start anything.
Hmm.
You never know how to, or when your life starts as well. I mean, technically it started when you were born, but you're always like, अब life start हो रही है, अब ये करना है.
Hmm.
But that never happens. You are always in the middle of life.
Hmm.
You can
Hmm.
only think back later on, in retrospection, you can maybe realize ki, oh, that's when it started.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Got it.
that's how I just go by my books as well in terms of, writing. Maybe I'll just make the middle of the book that I started with as the beginning itself. I wouldn't think too much about it.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
yeah, I get to fillers and all of these artificial things later on because I don't really want to dwell on them as much. Those are
Oh,
not the defining bits of the book.
sure. And like, do you also do that? For example, a lot of people, and I've heard this a lot of times, this is not my best work, shairi wise, or and I know you have a page on Instagram, Samira Speaking. So when you post something there,
डू यू डू दैट कि यार ये मेरा बेस्ट नहीं है तो मैं ये नहीं डालूंगी, या फिर डू यू जस्ट पोस्ट इट बिकॉज यू फेल्ट लाइक राइटिंग इट एंड यू फेल्ट लाइक पोस्टिंग इट, यू डू इट regardless of it being your best or not? So whether, for the question is whether should you wait for the best in your life, or you just keep creating because that's what you're meant to be. वो बेस्ट है कि नहीं वो तुम डिसाइड नहीं कर सकते हो, या तुमने डिसाइड कर लिया अपने लिए जो बेस्ट है वो ठीक है, दैट्स योर पर्सपेक्टिव, बट तुम्हारा एवरेज कैन बी गुड और कैन बी बेस्ट फॉर somebody, और तुम्हारा बेस्ट might not work, you know, it can just flop. So
Hmm.
what is your thinking about this?
So, there's somebody who told me that you can't be a critic of your own work. Somebody told me this very recently,
Huh.
which I sort of disagree with. I
Okay.
don't know. The thing is, I also agree with that person, but not really as well. So but I think I've confused everybody here. But what I'm trying to say is, what I would do in that situation is, or what I generally do when I'm faced with anything that I'm writing, I'm just going to be true in that moment, in that moment, because I'm so emotion driven as well. I'm just going to write what I'm feeling. The rawness of it has to remain intact, no
Hmm.
matter what.
Hmm.
I don't make changes to it later on.
Hmm.
I don't, except maybe if I just get a better word to use, I'll do that. But not really. It has to stay the same in its crux, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't really make a lot of changes to it later on. I'll just be raw and honest in that moment, leave it for a week, come back to it in a week, and then if I find it good enough, then I'm posting it. I
Oh,
don't care if anybody likes it or not. If I like it, then it's good.
okay. That's a good advice for people who are listening to this. Uh, any any moment in your life when you felt, okay, what was the moment in your life when you felt that you have to start writing? If somebody can do this, this is my moment, and you realized कि यार ये मुझे करना ही है, अब जिंदगी भर में राइटर ही बनूंगी. What was that moment for you?
There are like two defining moments that come to mind. One
Hmm.
of them was when I was like 7 or 8, and I was in all of this, uh, Champak and Chacha Chaudhary and Archie's phase. I started thinking of stories. I've been telling lies my whole life, although, so
Yeah.
I think I've been a storyteller my whole life, but
Yeah.
that's when I was like, oh, I have to write this down. So it was a story about a monkey or something that was the first story that I wrote when I was like 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a shitty story, but that was my first step towards writing. So I always remember that story. And it was about a monkey having Coca-Cola for the first time, by the way. But yeah, so that was that. It was a shitty story, I know that now, but
Okay.
that was my first step. And then I think, I think 3 years later, or 3 or 4 years later, when I read Harry Potter for the first time, I think when I was in class seventh or eighth, that's when I was like, I have to do this. If somebody can do this, then I have to try doing this. And if I can create a world like this, like Harry Potter's, there's nothing better than that, I guess. That's what the thought was, and that's how I got into writing, I think. Yeah. That's when I decided that I have to be a writer. There is no other way of being. I
Awesome.
wasn't born to do anything else. Although I'm not sure if I've done any, worthwhile writing so far, but we'll get there, I guess. But then that was my defining moment of
Sure.
just, yeah.
Okay. Uh, any quick words for the writers or the people who want to write or who want to pursue something uh, artistic? What do you want to say to those people?
I think, again, I'll just go back to, being honest in that moment of, because there is a certain moment, and your art is only, you can only create that particular art in that particular moment. It doesn't happen again,
Yeah.
you know? So if you're getting an idea, if you're getting an inspiration, an epiphany, whatever it is, just do it. Just write it, or just start using your brushes, like anything. Just do it, and then you can decide later on if it's good or not. But do it in that moment, and don't waste that moment. Is what I'm trying to say. That moment was not is not going to happen again.
Yes, awesome. Awesome. I think we have spoken a lot about a lot of things, and I would want to continue this conversation, but we will save it for the next episode, Astha. For now, I think it was great, and this is the first time we are doing this. क्योंकि हम लोग जनरली सिर्फ मस्ती करते हैं और हम कभी कभी सपने में भी नहीं सोचा था कि हम आस्था और मैं ये कर पाएंगे. So it was great, and
Yeah.
it's a good side of you that I did not know about. So thank you for that. And
Thank you for having me.
sorry,
I mean, thank you for having me.
pleasure. And so many questions I still have in my mind that I want to talk to you about the creative writing process and other things. But let's save it for the next podcast episode. And for now, thank you so much, so much, so much for doing this with
Thanks.
me. And
Thanks, Adi.
we will catch up later then.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.